Welcome back to Simon and Whiten, the podcast that discusses media, politics, and business. I'm Christian Whiten, joined as always by Mark Simon. Mark, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
Well, a lot going on, Mark, including in the media. The New York Times, a.k.a. Pravda. No, I'm kidding. New York Times, great company, profitable company, not failing as a former president predicted, apparently. New York Times has bought The Athletic for $550 million, as Fox Business wrote. As of the most recent quarter, the Times has nearly 8.4 million subscribers. It's been diversifying its coverage with lifestyle, advice, games, and recipes, helping counter a pullback from politics-driven news traffic that was part of the boom of politics in 2020. Fox Business, in its article about this acquisition, had a very funny quote from Alex, I think it's Mather, the co-founder of The Atlantic. He said in 2007 interview with The Times that, quote, "We will wait every local paper out and let them continuously bleed until we are the last one standing. We will suck them dry of their best talent at every moment. We will make business extremely difficult for them." Again, that's Alex Mather of The Athletic, which the New York Times just bought. Mark, this actually checks a bunch of boxes that you've always been big on, which, first of all, is, I think, going a little bit beyond news to what draws in an audience to, feel like they're sort of more a part of a religion or something.
I didn't get the buy. I didn't understand it. Look, $550 million. So basically, they got 450 journalists in The Athletic. So you paid about 1.2 million per journalist. But here's the problem. It lost about 55, according to Barclays Capital, who did an analysis of the deal. The Athletic lost $55 million last year. That's essentially about $120,000 per employee they lost. So in other words, how are you, and they go, oh, it's promotion and we'll be able to pull it back. All right, you pull back 50% of this, but it's $550 million. I'm a big fan of the New York Times. I think it's got one of the better business models there are. I think they've got 8.4 million subscribers to their news product and another million. They're coming up close to 10 million with all their products. It's kind of, people call it the Death Star. Unfortunately, I think they have designed in their own implosion device, as we have with the Death Star, where the little thing can get down. And what happened is there's arrogance here. Here's the problem. The New York Times doesn't understand sports. They have no idea about sports. I used to subscribe to The Athletic, but the problem is The Athletic's not about sports. The Athletic's is about the politics of sports.
Oh, God.
It's basically, some guy had a great line. He said, and if our listeners, if people don't know who this is, the guy said it's like listening to jock talk written. In other words, it's basically like some guy said, somebody trying to have a hot take of the latest ESPN or the latest morning sports radio, Fan 101. If you look at it, they do not do two things that sports have to do. First of all, they don't really have a passion for the sports. They take an incredibly critical eye towards the sports, much like Deadspin. And Deadspin, really, sports people like to read the garbage. What happened with Deadspin is, it was all the scandals and everything like that. But really, it didn't offer much to a sports fan. So essentially, they don't really cover the game. They do know a little bit about the game, but they're not really into the actual sports. They're not fans read sports because they want to know about their team. They're pulling for their team. They want to know how they're going to win. And the second group, very important group, is gamblers. People want to know how to bet. Mm-hmm. And The Athletic, I've seen it. It doesn't do much of anything, but that's the point. The New York Times, this fits in with our Upper West Side crowd. I mean, come on. Other than these guys, dressing up and going to a Knicks game, because they want to be seen on the sideline. New York is a sports town, but it's a sports town for the New York Post. It's a sports town for the Daily News. It's sports fans. And The Athletic doesn't appeal to sports fans, because I'm a sports fan and I read it and I'm going, okay, that's interesting. There are some wonderfully good articles really in there about sports. I mean, in terms of the structure and things like that, they've got some very good writers who understand that. But overall, no, it's not there. And also they're very PC, which sports fans are not. So, for example, they think it's wonderful that we have transgender swimmers, and they think it's one. Sports fans, that's not sports fans. Sports fans are mostly men, by the way, and the women who are sports fans are incredibly conservative women. It is a myth. The liberal woman, and I have a very long-time person I've known with a major sports league. I don't want to say it because I think people might figure it out. And he has said they spent hundreds of millions of dollars in his career there chasing like single, moderate, liberal women to like watch their sport. And he said it's the greatest waste of money ever. They don't like it. You can tell it's football. But I mean, they don't like it. And it's not going to happen. Wellesley College is not going to open up they're not going to have football night. It's not what's going to happen.
They can play Smith and Bryn Mawr.
But the thing is like, that's $550 million. There was a lot of different ways to spend it. And at the end of the day, some very smart people at the Wall Street, at the New York Times, they're very smart. They know what they're doing. They're very good. They've made a fundamental mistake. We will see The Athletic. They will find some way to justify the purchase 5, 6, 7 years out. They will immediately write down, probably in the next 2 or 3 years, probably write it down. It'll probably be worth 55, 60 million, and it'll be incorporated into the page. I know they plan to do local sports. That's one of the things they hope to do.
Right.
I'm not so sure that the way they do sports is what people want. You know what I'm saying? So
right. Yeah, what I'm hearing is the last time the New York Times did sports well, they were reporting on polo matches in Long Island. Before Levittown was constructed,
which is fine. Which is fine. Go with what you know. Go with. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes New York Post. I mean, I think Wall Street Journal has some very good sports reporting on the business of sports, and I think a lot of times the New York Times writes some very good stuff, and they have a lot of good reporters there. But I'm sorry, you're not going to be a sports page. It's not going to be there.
Right. What do you think overall, though, still? And I think in the past you've been an investor in the New York Times, if I'm correct. So, they're approaching 10 million subscribers, and you do have this, you go there, and it's always a little bit weird. You see their opinion writers. I think only 1 or 2 out of about 20 are smiling in their photos because they're very serious people. But you do have the mix of recipe, lifestyle, all the passions that liberals spend a great deal of time worrying about. Essentially, if you're trying to replace God with politics, it's not such a bad product. Are you still bullish on them as a company, setting aside politics?
I think there's really 3 or 4 major news organizations that are going to do well. I think the New York Times is actually very strong. They know their demographic. They know what they're doing. You basically just summed it up. I think the Wall Street Journal is still very strong. They have a few issues. I think really trying to be a little bit too broad. I wish they would go back to their core, understand who reads it, and cater to that market. And I think they'd be fine. I think Bloomberg, because they sell terminals and they can do a few things, they'll be in the financial world. And I think Reuters will always be out there and will be there. And believe it or not, I think if CNN does their revamp, I think the brand is still strong enough that if they do hard news and get away from the crazy drunk people at night and all that stuff, I think CNN probably, and of course Fox, will be fine. I'm not seeing a lot of shakeups. I mean, my opinion about BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed is basically, their business model is upper middle class white people who are subsidizing their workforce because they sent their kid to Fordham or to NYU at $75,000 a year. And then BuzzFeed's paying them $47,000 a year to live in New York City. There's nothing really going there. And I think the other thing that's happening too is maybe we just need 5 or 7 or 8 major national media organizations that, in other words, let's be blunt. I mean, if there's a terrorist attack or a fire or something like that, do you really need more than 7 or 8 different media organizations there? I'd even make the argument you don't really need that many more at the White House, to be honest with you.
Right.
And I've made the argument at the White House for years. Nobody cares what I think, but I'd rather have like 15 have the same reporters there all the time, you know what I'm saying? So they can actually drill down in questions and not have this 75, 100 rotating through. that basically they get one question and then they get to come back 3 weeks later and ask it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And follow up. But the thing is like, I don't believe that there's really a lot of people coming that are going to offer something, because I believe most people are going down these rabbit holes. In other words, if you're really interested in democratic politics, you're going to find people on Substack. You're going to find the blogs. You're going to find it there. You know what I'm saying? And then you'll come back for your general news. I wish I could fully understand what's happening with consumption habits, but I believe the future for media happens to be with consumption habits and not with content. I think content's the same. It's always the same. It's, conservative, liberal, this. It's going to be who can guess people's consumption habits. How are they consuming media? A lot of us assumed that, basically you'd go to the New York Times and, that, and I think that's behind. We'll also get our people who love sports. No, the fact of the matter is the guy who's the liberal college professor who's reading the New York Times and loves it online and stuff like that, but he's a Big Ten basketball fanatic. He goes to the Big Ten sites to read basketball. He's not at the New York Times for basketball.
Right. If you're really into specializing, then there's no amount that's sort of this.
And there's so much more out there. And I would hope one day we would be 1/50th, 1/500th of the size of Joe Rogan. You know what I'm saying? But the simple fact of the matter is he has changed a lot. There's a lot changing now. And I think the fact is his content really hasn't changed too much. And nobody's bringing – I don't see what you're going to bring new to content. Different opinions? Maybe. Who knows? I doubt it. I don't see it. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be distribution, and it's going to be, what is the consumption patterns? Who can figure out what people are consuming?
Well, that actually, gives you a lot to think about as you try and think through what the future of media is. It's amazing how – as far as industries go, of course, they go through change, but media seems to have been in a state of chaos, some good, some bad, since about 2000.
And there's a lot of vanity stuff out there, too. I mean, I love Bloomberg. Mm-hmm. I think Bloomberg actually is not a vanity project. Their opinion pages are, but the rest of it's not. But, the Washington Post is getting actually pretty silly these days. I mean, you watch Jeff Bezos. I mean, he's the owner of a newspaper. It's a major newspaper. They're trying to be serious people. And, we've got he and his girlfriend, basically his girlfriend hitting on Leonardo DiCaprio. And then, he's off in St. Bart's with his, showing us what a great body he has. And, they're playing grab ass in front of the paparazzi. They know the paparazzi's there. He's the head of a newspaper that's there. And then, the other day, they promoted a guy to one of the top editor positions, and there's all over Twitter that he's being sued as part of a thing. So, and that's from his own people are tweeting it. And then you've got, this fact checker who's always in the news. They've got these crazy Rubin woman. I can't remember who that. I'll say that Rubin woman, Jennifer Rubin. She's crazy, and they have it. And I think the thing is like, and I wonder what the brand is. And, I really think that basically, I worked for a guy, and one of the things that we were always incredibly conscious of at Apple Daily was Jimmy's not a sugar daddy. He's not a sugar daddy. That paper is supposed to make money. And it made money for a long, long time. And then the communists had something to say about that. But, we also were like a newspaper. We had the same trials and tribulations as everybody.
Right. Well, shifting gears, but still in sort of the marketability of ideas here, IPOs in 2021 were, as it turns out, disappointing. This happens kind of frequently at the end of a business cycle. According to the Wall Street Journal, quote, nearly 400 traditional IPOs, along with an additional, get this, 600 special purpose acquisition company launches, SPACs, as of course they are known, inundated fund managers and analysts this last year, with many saying that not a day went by without a formal call or pitch. We don't have, I haven't seen at least now final numbers, but through the last, at least through the first 8 months of 21, IPO shares rose. However, November, they were still trading up 12% on average. The steam is coming off. And then by late December, they traded 9% below their IPO prices. Let me throw this together with another story, but it's related. Another sign that a bubble may be ready to deflate or pop. ARKK, it's an ETF. ARK Innovation by Kathy Wood, who seems to be in the media a whole lot, finally off by 14% just in the last month, and the correction is significantly larger if you go back a few more months. So she just buys sort of the flavor of the month, the biggest it girl of whatever is out there in equity, and predicts that the world is changing, so sky-high valuations don't matter. Top holdings: Tesla, Teladoc Health, Coinbase Global, Unity Software, Roku, and Zoom. So, you look at these things, and I've been preaching this long, so I don't know if I jumped the gun or if they'll just be proven wrong. But it seems, it's sort of like 2000. The Fed floods the economy and the market with capital. When Y2K didn't happen then, it pulled back. That sparked the dot-com crash. It would take, I think, a decade for NASDAQ to get back to its highs. Do you think we're just right at the beginning of this potentially happening again, at least with the high flyers that we're seeing?
Well, I got a couple of questions for you. First of all, did you see any SPAC that really caught your eye?
Not one that I would invest in. Of course, there's the one that acquired Donald Trump's media company. We've talked about that. It popped 20% this week. I think it's down 10% at the end of the week here. But that is sort of like a meme-driven stock. I think you'd say it's people who like Trump and think the media company will be something. I think it'll end up as a joke. But aside from that one, I none really leap to mind.
I mean, but was it? I mean, to me, the overall theme of 2020 and 2021 has been one thing: still COVID. And essentially, it's the climb out of COVID. So, when we look at what shares people are looking at and what things, I bought New York Times and I bought News Corp, which is the Wall Street Journal, based on COVID. And, SAAS stocks, which I was big on, I bought on COVID. Made a few other mistakes in here and now and then, you know what I'm saying? But, I'll give you an example. I really hate the SPACs. I hate them. I just hate them.
Yeah.
I think, when you see, A-Rod SPAC, and then you see the guy from Shake Shack, the Shake Shack SPAC, it really, there's something about them that's absolutely corrupt. I mean, I become a communist leftist when I see those things, because it's like a con man. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you almost are like, would they roll their wagon through town, and I feel like the sheriff that has to walk out and say, keep on going to the next town before they sell their, their tonics and their, illegal mixes and all that stuff. It was just such a con. And I think one of the things that we really, that I just couldn't find one. People would tell me, you're missing this. And I'm like, I don't get it. And then it brought out the worst in people, just like you said, like, oh, Trump's up 52% and Trump's down 43%. And he's up this, that's not a way to live your life. The vast majority of us, even myself, I don't live off my stock market earnings. I have a job. I run companies, you know what I'm saying? And so, or oversee companies. And so the point really being is, to this day, and as we consider it, there is really very little, very, very little that, how would I say, there's really very little that I saw in anything, in IPOs or anything else, that really made me wonder. I mean, we saw some IPOs. The Brooks Brothers IPO that was canceled the other day. It's Brooks Brothers and a few other stores, Forever and all those were in there. And I was actually watching that when I was saying, hey, this might be kind of interesting, because I think maybe they might, maybe they could hold on to some real estate, and that gives them a national advantage, believe it or not. I'm in my mind in the online retail world, if you actually have a little bit of real estate, that people can come in and see your stuff. But, what's all that exciting about it in 2020, 21? There's nothing. And so I think it was kind of a blasé year. And, I mean, people like, oh, we really recovered. I go, yeah, but we were flat on our back. Right. It's like today they announced a 3.9% unemployment rate. Great. But how many people are not looking for work? The vast majority of the 5
million decrease in workforce.
And then we can't find people. So that tells you something's wrong. And the inflation number is a lot worse than people think it is. It's a lot worse. And it's inflation is such an evil. I mean, I think, I remember reading some stuff by Paul Volcker. The damage that it does to, like, really the bottom 70% of Americans. I should say the majority of Americans. The top 30%,
Yes.
we pay a little bit more for everything. The top 10%, the gas cost me a little bit more. But, I for some reason, I took a picture I was going through some things, and I had a picture of gas from 2018, November 2018. I don't know why I had the picture on my phone, but I had it. And it was a BP station. The gas was $2.29. It's the station right up the road from me. $2.29. I was driving by. I saw it. I looked at it. I sent it to my brother. I was driving by it today. Gas is $3.74, and that's one of the more reasonable stations around. That's a gas station that people go to. You know what I'm saying? So imagine you go from 2 something to 370. So I'm filling up a Discovery Range Rover. And so usually it would cost me $65. Now it's costing me $88. Or $89. So I can afford that. But by the fact of the matter is, the guy who's delivering pizzas, he's got a huge hit coming. So I do think
think of how much if you have to drive a tractor across a field. I mean, all of the inputs to so much of the economy depend on gas and energy. The stock market to me the last 2 years has been me. Did really well on some SaaS stocks, did really well, on the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, but I think that's over for a while. But I'm looking now where Well, another one that both you and I are in, I think, and we talked about it and made light of it on a previous episode. It's Rio Tinto, the mining company. And they're up 13% in the last month. Mm-hmm. That's a little startling. It's great when you own shares of a company. It's up that much. But I sort of viewed it as a stable company where the stock would be mostly flat, but they have a shocking 9.5% dividend. This is technically, I believe, an UK company, but a lot of their stuff is in Australia and Southeast Asia and elsewhere mining. You talk about ESG. I think the E stands for what? Environment, the S for sustainability, the G for governance. So I propose changing the acronym where the E is evil, the S is slash and burn, and the G, maybe gouge. I don't know, still working on it. But, I want a company that's evil, that will slash and burn the rainforest and gouge customers to produce profits. No, I'm kidding. Kidding, of course. But, I don't know. Rio, we didn't say not to invest in this. We sort of said they have a CEO who is a panda hugger. He's a former Canadian ambassador to China. But, probably that's just a little bit of window dressing. And, in fact, this company has a bright future.
I mean, look, Barton is he likes money more than anybody else. He likes money as much as everybody else, so he's going to do what he has to do. And, when you're giving out a 9% dividend and when you're, growing the way they're growing and when you have the employee, one of the things about them, when you have the employee profit participation plans that they have there, and you're dealing with miners, I don't think the chairman, I don't think he's going to show up with the Green New Deal there, if he wants to walk out of the meeting live. So right. I like the company. I still like the company. I still think it's a buy. When I see a dip after this month, which I think we will, it's going to go. Look, I think any natural resources company, for whatever reason it is going to be doing well. Now, part of it is just going to be, frankly, that look at electric cars and look at things we're doing now in terms of moving away from combustible engines. That is going to take new and different types of minerals that I'm not smart enough to describe or to work with, but I know someone's going to have to go get them. And I think Rio Tinto and some of these other mining companies are there. Mining, though, is, as I always tell people, I said, to me, I think you pick the big guys, you pick the winners. Because the one thing I do know about the mining industry is it is the land of, failed wildcatters where the big guys just, it's almost like those movies, we almost made it. I mean, a guy told me one time, have you ever seen that Daniel Day-Lewis, There Will Be Blood, the oil movie? A guy told me they could have done the same exact movie and they could have used mining. Could have been, he said exactly the same thing. It's like when you watch.
There's got to be big economies of scale. Just favor the big guys.
That's like my favorite thing about the National Geographic Channel. I love about the Discovery Channel and the National Geographic Channel. What I love about them is that, we're the Nature Channel or whatever it is, and their biggest shows are cut the forest down, mining,
gold mining in
mass fishing,
Western Australia,
crabbing, big machines that, burn a lot of gas, you know what I'm saying? Completely ridiculous, unjustified projects in China. There's a guy up there who does all these giant projects in China, and he always gets like I don't think anybody catches. He goes, so we're building this for $2 billion. And you say, every day, 3,000 cars will cross for $2 billion every day. And if you listen to him, he's going like, there is no return on investment here at all. You could run a ferry, you could run a string of ferries back and forth, and it would be, more economical. But, and so the thing is, I think getting back to Rio Tinto, I think people should look for companies. Solana is another company I'm starting to look at right now. I think that's a very interesting company. But I think they're going to have these ups and downs of regulatory, but it's not going to affect the overall operations. You open up a mine, you've opened up a mine for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? And you look at these things, and the other thing too is that one of the proxies for this business is actually Caterpillar, and even to a degree Volvo a little bit. Some of the big Mitsubishi and some other ones, and just watch their orders and watch their order books, and basically Caterpillar is selling everything they can get out the door right now. And I think that's going to continue for the large mining equipment. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the other things. I just saw something, and I would tell people where to find it, but that's my little piece of insider information. So screw you. Go find it yourself.
So the opposite end of the vehicle spectrum from a cat is Tesla. We mentioned them earlier. Tesla opened a showroom in, wait for it, Xinjiang. That's the part of China where the Uyghurs live, and there are 1 to 2 million of them in political concentration camps. They opened this just as the U.S. law limiting imports from that region kicked in. As reported by the Wall Street Journal, Tesla announced, quote, on this last day of 2021, we meet in Xinjiang. In 2022, let us together launch Xinjiang on its electric journey. And the posting was accompanied by pictures from an opening ceremony that had traditional Chinese lion dances, people posing with placards reading, quote, Tesla, heart, Xinjiang. I think Elon Musk actually dispensed with his public relations people, which might not be the worst thing in the world to do, especially if you attract as much media as him, why not just do what you want to do? On the other hand, this seems like a tin ear, even by the standard of U.S. corporations that do business in China. Are these guys nuts?
I have a different view on this. I think it's like, everybody discovered that Apple had cut that $252 billion deal with the Chinese. And I think what we learned was that essentially this deal was opened in 2016. It was probably planned in 2013 and 14. And I think what we have to remember is these things take a long, long time to come to fruition. And the same thing with Tesla. This thing was planned in Xinjiang in 2017, 2018, as part of their franchise agreements. He does not own it. It's a franchise. And so what are you going to do? It's like, to me, it's no different really for Elon Musk than FedEx having offices in Xinjiang or Chevrolet or somebody else. That said, the optics are horrible. The optics are probably as bad as they could get. I mean, unless they would take a Uyghur and flog them as the part of the opening ceremony. But I mean, it was awful optics, but I don't think Elon Musk had a thing that he could do to stop it. I think he is up there, he's trapped. And I think what we're starting to see is, I call it franchise capitalism in China. In other words, basically Tesla is just going to become one thing. Tesla is going to become a franchise. In other words, everything will be designed in the U.S. All the talent will be in the U.S. All the marketing will be in the U.S. Everything, in a way, much like Apple is, except for they will manufacture that in China. And from a shareholder structure, maybe we just treat it as like that's a franchise. In other words, this is Tesla. Tesla's everywhere. and this is our China franchise, and all the good stuff is there. The big loser here is China, because the big loser is going to be China, in that the technology, the development, the knowledge, and the know-how is not going to not be shared in China. It's just going to be a place where you sell it. I use that as a business model because back in the days, if you go around with the luxury brands in Southeast Asia, if you go to Singapore and you go to Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, now Shanghai, Tokyo, if you're dealing with LVMH or someone like that, it's all LVMH people. It's top-notch people. It's all the people they're feeding back. Show up in Taipei, Manila, so they're franchisees. And so there's no real talent. It's just basically shop people and stuff like that. And I think that's what China's going to head for if they can't really turn around the human rights stuff. Are they going to kick Tesla out? I think probably not. But I think if they do, the payoff for Tesla would be, quite frankly, no Chinese cars coming to the U.S. And that could be part of it, And Tesla could, I just and with the U.S. treating Chinese car manufacturers hostile. So I'm hoping that Elon Musk is not there. Unfortunately, I think Elon Musk will be caught up in this in a matter of weeks. It'll be full on with him.
Interesting. Yeah, well, it's going to be a big year for business in China, good and bad, in the sense you have the Olympics coming up and, perhaps more importantly, a big party congress where Xi Jinping will probably once again crown himself as paramount leader for life. We'll talk about that more as it arrives. Finally, a quick story here. CBC, which I seem to recall is Canada's version of PBS, maybe worse. A reporter there, Tara Henley, quit the increasingly left-wing Canadian public broadcaster. She wrote on Substack, quote, "When I started at the National Public Broadcaster in 2013, the network produced some of the best journalism in the country. By the time I resigned last month, it embodied some of the worst trends in the mainstream media. In a short period of time, the CBC went from being a trusted source of news to churning out clickbait that reads like a parody of the student press. Those of us on the inside know just how swiftly and how dramatically the politics of the broadcaster have shifted. It used to be, this is the funny part, it used to be that I was one of the farthest to the left in any newsroom, occasionally causing strain in story meetings with my views on issues like the housing crisis. I am now easily the most conservative, frequently sparking tension by questioning identity politics. This happened in the span of about 18 months. My politics did not change." I mean, that's pretty amazing. Someone who was a lefty on the left side of a public broadcaster in Canada, granted it's Canada, the change that happened that quickly. You do a lot of business in Canada. What do you think?
I usually don't watch the CBC for that reason when I'm in Canada. I think what is amazing is when she talks about things like, for example, I'm married to a Filipino woman. We have Filipino relatives. I lived in the Philippines. And my wife heard the term that this Headley made fun of. She made fun of the term Filipinx. And I told my wife Filipinx, and it took like 10 minutes for it. What does she mean by Filipinx? Is that this? And my daughter Mary is explaining to her what's going on and all these things. And I think the thing is that what she really learned, and I think what people have to look at, is identity politics has really nothing to do with identity politics. It has everything to do with gaining advantageous positions in the office. It's all about advantage now. It's like they pull it out, and as a manager, I've unfortunately seen it a couple of times. I'm blessed in the fact that I worked in a Taiwanese at a Hong Kong company where I was the only white guy for a long time. But I would see the mentality come out very amusingly, usually in like Chinese American or Chinese Brits, British Chinese or Canadian Chinese. They would often just say things that you would see the rest of the staff just like look at them like, what's this or what's that? And, in other words, they would start talking about things like I still remember, when the riots were going on, the BLM riots. You know what I'm saying? Quite frankly, it was an indicator of how Hong Kong people feel about riots. They don't really like them. And we'd have these Chinese Americans, trying to explain to the staff why it's okay to riot. And you'd look at these people and they would be like, no, I don't think it's okay to riot. But to me, I know who she is. After I saw this, I went back and I go, okay, that's her. She is a liberal. She is by our standards, she's far left. We probably wouldn't have a nice dinner with her, but she seems like a nice person. And I think the real thing is I think what happens is that basically she sees this being used as a weapon. And I think that's coming out more and more now. And I think that's going to be a real problem, for people. But I don't understand how you can. It's going to come to a head in many, many ways. And I think it's for companies. You have to be really careful about it. It's the reason why I think Twitter is really shafted. I think the one thing that Jack Dorsey really failed on is when I talk to people who know it, he's allowed that culture to be taken over by basically the crazy people, and I think that's in part why he left it. He's kind of like the guy who let everybody in and tried to work with everybody, and then all of a sudden one day he doesn't control things. And I think the new CEO is probably going to find himself in real trouble within a year because they're banning everybody. They're blocking everything.
Right.
So what do you do? I don't know how you move forward with everything being a check on someone's identity and nothing being a check on someone's performance. It doesn't matter. Performance is almost a secondary thing. When we've talked about this, it's the reason why. Look at Harvard Medical School. Harvard Medical School is going to go get substandard students no matter what now, because they've got to get substandard students. They've got to graduate a certain number of minority students, and Chinese don't count anymore. James, my son James said, Dad, if I go out to Washington State and California, I'm white. He's Chinese. My son's I'm white because I'm classified as that. And why is that? He's a minority. Chinese are a minority in this country. It's because basically they've done a little bit too well. They're making a little bit too much money. And so therefore they're going to be pushed aside by the people who are using, basically they use this stuff as an advantage in the office. And any manager will tell you see it. I do think they're on the downside now. I think, probably a couple of years ago and a year ago, it was just constantly moving up where it became hard to manage.
Yeah.
I think now the performance issues are so great and that people see it right away. I still remember it wasn't my company. It was a company we were invested in. We saw somebody pull this. They pulled this on the company. And they got a really rude shock because the company was like, no, that's fine. You can leave. You two can leave. They just told them. And they were like, what? And they go, no, if that's what you feel about us. And they became aggressive because the point was the guy said, if we give in on this, and he came to I wasn't on the board. We were an investor. He came and said, if I give in on this, it's all over. If I somehow say that there's implicit bias in the company. And this guy, what drove him crazy was this guy was Asian American, you know what I'm saying? And he comes from an incredibly, his father runs really a shop, you know what I'm saying? His father's was a teacher in India, and they're not wealthy people, and he runs I don't want to say who he is, but he runs a small shop. He's a shopkeeper. He's the son of a shopkeeper, and he worked his ass off, and he went to a really good school, and he's got a company now that's worth investing in. And then somebody came in and they told him that he was a male and he was part of the dominant, and, they didn't feel that he should be making the calls on some of these things. And he and his partner said, you're out of here. His partner, by the way, which is even funnier, his partner is a French Vietnamese guy. mother's Vietnamese, father's French, but he looks like these. And the point is, it just got to the point. It's just ridiculous. And I think that's the problem that people have with this these days. It just gets ridiculous. I mean, one last celebrity reference. You guys, of course, we follow Dave Chappelle. You know what I'm saying? And you saw he had that guy, Patton Oswalt, who I'm not a big fan of. I think he's kind of a jerk. Patton Oswalt and him are friends. And Patton Oswalt said, "Hey, I'm with my friend Dave Chappelle." And then he got roasted on Twitter. And he sold his friend out. So I don't like all this stuff because I think it's horrible stuff. You know what I'm saying? And also, it's people on Twitter. Who cares what people on Twitter?
That's fundamentally important. It's realizing that a Twitter mob is first of all, you don't know how many of those are just bots.
That's right.
Or it's not real. Just ride it out. Yeah, and it's interesting with so much disruption in the economy from the actual virus, then the sort of politically induced freakouts around the virus, and all the government money that was thrown in by the Fed, by Congress, etc. We'll see. But compounding that is this move away from meritocracy and promotion of a lot of people who, frankly, didn't earn it. So, we'll see the product of that. It's all the time we have left for this episode. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed watching or listening as much as we enjoyed making it, please subscribe or go over to Apple Podcasts. Leave us a comment. We'll be back again very soon with another episode of Simon and White. Thanks.